Hello, I'm Erica Nicole. Welcome back to my channel, Rooted and Rich. And today I want to talk to you about wealth building tips. If you ever felt broke and you are making money, this is the video for you. Or if you're ever been curious about like, hey, I just got my job or I'm starting to think about these things. I really want to know what can I do to build wealth to make sure that I'm financially set up for success in the future. This video is for you. Wealth building is simple. It's not sexy. So the things I'm going to tell you, there is no magic pill. There is no like get rich scheme. They're just simple things that will make you feel 100% better in your finances, or at least 80% better in your finances. And so let's just jump right into it because I don't want to keep you in anticipation. The first one is emergency fund building. The reason you have to have an emergency fund is because it protects your today. So if you were to lose your job, if something was to happen to your car, need a new tire, need a fix, it protects your day. It makes things go from emergencies to just like inconveniences in your day to day. When you have an emergency fund, especially when you get to that 3 to 6 months emergency fund, a lot of times you feel very secure. If people ask you to like go out or do something, you're like, oh, well, I guess I can because I have an emergency fund. Or, if you're like debating around buying something and you're like, well, I can afford it, I have an emergency fund. And so that emergency fund really just gives you a cushion and it makes you feel very secure because you know that you are prepared for any kind of emergency that pops up in your life that is on a smaller scale. So the emergency fund is the first thing. And I say start with saving $1,000. If you start with $1,000, once you do that, you can increase. The other thing I would talk about with emergency fund is it takes time to build 3 to 6 months. Depending on what your expenses are, that might be tens of thousands of dollars. That might be 15 grand or 20 grand. And so it takes time. So when you think about this emergency fund, I want you to set up a system. I don't want you to wait until you say like, oh, I have to make 6 figures or I have to make $80,000 or I have to make $200,000. Do not wait. Set up system in place. What I mean by that is open you up a high yield savings account. You can go to bankrate.com and you can look up high yield savings accounts and see what percentage they're giving. Right now, most of them are around 4%. Who I use and I've been with for almost a decade is Goldman Sachs, Marcus by Goldman Sachs. And so that has been one that I've used. I've bought their CDs. I have a high yield savings account with them. And so that is the high yield savings account of my choice. What I'll say with these systems is that you can start with any amount because you can start with $5 a pay period or $10 and you can increase it over time. A lot of times we wait to say like, oh, I'll wait till I have an extra $100 a pay period to do this, or I'll wait till I have this amount. And if you wait until you do, you never will have it. So go ahead and start the system and then increase it over time. The next thing that I want you to be aware about when you think about wealth building is your retirement account. A lot of you guys might be starting your first job, your first professional job, starting your career out, and they are offering you a 401k, a 403b, a 457b, whatever the case may be. And I might got the numbers wrong, so 403a, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of them. But they might be offering you. They also might be offering you a match when you invest in these, and that is free money. So take it. I would say with this, when the advice I got initially when I talked to my mom about that is just put what you can in there. So I started with like 3%, set it up where 3% would go in there. But one thing that I learned is that the more you can put in there, the more prepared you are for the future. And that starting very young, even with just 1% or 2% or 3% is better than waiting till you're making 6 figures and putting in 15%. Start now because compounding interest working in your favor is going to outbeat you starting later in life with bigger sums of money. You can't make up for time. That's one thing that you can't make up in a retirement. So go ahead and start. Some of you all might be saying like, well, what is in a 401k or what is in a 403b? Most of the time you can select stocks, but I recommend starting out so that you don't confuse yourself, so that you don't get overwhelmed, just getting a age-based plan that says like, hey, I'm going to retire in 2075 or 2065. And so age-based plan does is it has some individual stocks, but it has indexes and mutual funds in there, index funds in there. But it also saves you the trouble of trying to figure out how much you should be in stocks versus bonds versus different types of investments, because it will start to divest you, meaning like take you out of more riskier investments and put you in less riskier investments. So when you're 25, you might be in 95% stock, but as you get closer to retirement age, you might be in 90% bonds or something like that, and 5% stocks and stuff like that. And until you get more familiar with those things, that can be really helpful of setting it aside, not thinking about it, and just allowing that to happen. As you get more familiar with the stock market, of course, you can play around with it. Some employers allow for more freedom, some don't, and some employers have some really good options. So just go ahead, invest, and allow it to grow. Some of you guys might be saying like, hey, I'm part of the gig economy. They don't offer a retirement plan. They don't offer, the company I'm at doesn't offer it. Don't feel bad about that. You can also, through Vanguard, Fidelity, and other brokerage vendors, you can do a Roth IRA where you can start to put money into that account on your own. So you can go to like Vanguard.com and set up a brokerage account, and you can set up a Roth IRA, and then you can start to put money in there and automate it just like that, just like you would be doing if you did it with an employer. And they have age-based plans as well. And I use Vanguard right now for my brokerage account. And so a lot of companies offer Vanguard or Fidelity. Either one works. It's just a preference. But we can talk more about that on this channel if you guys have questions and stuff like that. But you can start even if you don't have an employer sponsor. If you do have an employer sponsor and they do match, your goal is to try to get up to the match. So if they match 3%, you want to be putting in 3% because you want all of that free money if you can do it. With the retirement account, I would say that you all just start. You can increase it every year, and sometimes if you increase every year, you won't even notice it. And so just really start. That's a really big wealth building tool. The next thing that I want to talk about that helps with wealth building is not paying interest. I pay no interest, and I do not believe in paying interest. I do have credit cards, but I pay them off every single month. Things that are interest bearing in my life and gaining interest, I tackle head on. So I have a video about the baby steps and how Dave Ramsey does it when he's tackling debt. Through that video, you can listen a little bit about that and how if you have a large sum of debt, how you can snowball that debt and stuff like that. I won't go in detail, but interest working for you is a blessing. Interest working against you eats up your wealth. And so I really want you guys to focus on paying down debt and not paying interest. That is one of my strategies altogether. Even if I get a credit card and make a large purchase and I say I get a credit card with 24 months no interest, I make sure before that 24 months up, I have a game plan, a solid game plan to pay it off, and I pay it off in that time. Or if I charge up for some gas and some more stuff because I want to keep my credit, score growing, and I want to use my credit cards and gain points and stuff like that, I'll swipe, and then when I get paid, I'll pay that total balance off. And so one of the biggest wealth building tips you can do is to not let interest take your wealth for tomorrow. Because if you keep paying on things you bought yesterday, you'll never have enough for tomorrow. The next and last and final tip that I will give you, and this is really not a tip around like what you do with your money, but also but about a mindset. And so the mindset that I want you to have is aligning your values to your money. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we spend frivolous. We never think about what we value. We never think about what we want out of life. We kind of think about that, but we don't think of that in terms of money. If you like to travel, if you like to spend time with your family, if you want to live in a city near the water, if these things are things that you value or that are important to you, or if you've had a life and death experience and you're like, I want to spend every moment enjoying my family, or I want to spend every moment enjoying my partner, then you have to align the way you spend with those things you want. And I know this might be difficult for people, or people have never thought about this, but this really does help you with making financial decisions. Does this align with my values? Does this get me closer to what I actually want? And sometimes it can be really helpful because let's say you're trying to buy a car and you don't value cars, not in the same sense. Like, as long as the car gets you to point A and point B, it looks decent, you're not a car person. So that's not a value of yours. And it's not for me. So I'm not a big car person. And so when I went to go buy a car, I knew that I just needed a car that was reliable, that got me to point A to point B. And so I didn't just go out and get any car because I didn't want to spend a ton of money on something that I don't value, that wouldn't bring me joy. When I get in my car, it gets me where I want. And that is about as much joy as I get out of it. I don't get any joy out of that. What I get joy out of is and I find value in spending time with my family. So I'm planning a little small trip to go see a play soon with my son and my mother, and those type of things bring me joy, knowing that we experience something as a family together. And so those type of things bring me joy, and I try to make sure that I set aside money for things that I value and that I want. And by doing that, that eliminates stress. It helps me make clear decisions, brings clarity to my decision making around money. And it also takes away guilt, because if I spent something that I value, a lot of money on something I value that I could afford, then I don't have to feel guilty about that purchase. But if I buy something, a large purchase that I just, it wasn't part of my value, it was just on sale, and I'm like, oh yeah, I saved this amount of money by buying it, that, and I get it home and I don't feel the value or the joy over, or shortly after that I forgot about it, then that is not a need for me. That was more of a want and an impulse buy. The other thing that I would say with wealth building, and this is not one of my 4 tips, but it is something that really has helped me, is not emotionally buying. So one of the things that has really helped me is just putting stuff in cart and walking away for 24 hours to see if I really want it. Or when I'm at the store or wherever I'm at, or if I see something that I stepping away and really feeling if I need it. And also limiting my time to how much I spend on social media and stuff like that, so that I'm not so bombarded with stuff that I don't have. Kind of keeping my mind stayed upon the things that are important to me versus allowing things to just sell itself to me and emotionally spending. I also try to look for at times when I am emotionally spending, am I sad? Is something going on? Am I trying to cope? What is forcing me to buy? And really thinking about those things, because the way you spend is going to determine how fast you can build wealth in those other buckets, as far as retirement, getting an emergency fund, paying off debt and not paying interest. All of that stuff is going to be built on the premise of how do you handle money? How are you internalizing when you spend? And what does that say about you? And I implore you today to kind of look at all the stuff you're spending. And I want you to just take a look and just scroll and maybe write down a few purchases and see, is this the life I want to live? Am I spending on the things that bring me joy, or am I just spending? Do I even know what brings me joy, what I value? Have I thought about that? I'm going to ask that you think about 3 things that you absolutely value. They're your top 3 values. Mine is faith, family, and money. And that is why I started this channel. That's why it's called Rooted and Rich, because those are that is my top values. And so if it doesn't have to do with my faith, my family, or my money, or it messes up my money, or one of those things, then I know that it is not what I need to be spending my money on. What are your values? What wealth building tip do you want to use to really set yourself up for financial success? And let me know in the comments, what are you doing?